Mhm.
Yeah.
Hi guys. So we're here talking today about your book, The Proudest Color. We're really excited to share this with the librarians and the teachers that are joining, also readers and reviewers. So just talking about the book, can you guys give a quick synopsis for anyone that isn't familiar with the story and the themes?
Yeah, well, we're first of all really excited to be here and be able to talk about our book. The Proudest Color is about a young girl named Zahra. She's biracial, and basically it follows her through her first day of school. And while she's at school, she realizes that, she's the only one with a brown skin tone and might not exactly feel like she fits in, but she remembers that she's very proud of her skin tone. And she goes about her day, and then she actually experiences overt discrimination by a classmate. And this really begins to plant the seed of doubt in who she is and her pride in her skin tone. And she talks about it with her family, which is great because we want children to be able to do that. And they help remind her of all the important historical figures and celebrities and people out in the world that have done really significant things that share her skin tone, that are similar to her, and that she's destined to go on and do amazing things in her life. And one other thing that we include in this book is the aspect of emotion identification. So we talk a lot about how Zahra goes about her day feeling and seeing in color. She could feel nervous and happy and excited. So she has all these various emotions, but the one that she associates with proud, the feeling proud, is her skin tone.
That's awesome. And you guys, I know you guys work in the space dealing with like helping children deal with racism and racial socialization. Can you talk about how that really played into the story of the book and how you guys use those tools to tell the story?
Sure. Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that we brought in what we know from our experience and training and education as clinicians. Sheila's a pediatric psychologist. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and also lean on the research on what are evidence-based approaches that we can kind of digest into a children's book format to give both kids a way of learning how to feel proud about who they are, to buffer against discrimination, and also to instill a sense of hope and resiliency in them, and also help parents have those conversations about race and racism with their kids. So, we know that discrimination can lead to mental health issues for individuals, and ways that we can help that is through this concept, like you mentioned, racial socialization. And it's kind of how someone feels about race and their ethnicity and background, no matter what background they come from, is kind of a net result of how they're socialized to their own race and others. And so we really keyed in on two aspects of it that were shown to be the most positively influential. One being preparation for bias. So letting kids know that this is actually something that can happen in the world. The world isn't always a nice, fun fairy tale, but also instilling a sense of hope and connectedness with their family, and other resources. And then also aspect called cultural socialization, which instills a sense of pride and belonging and place in the world based on that person's color or culture, whatever that might be. So that's really where we designed a book that kids can kind of track Zahra's path through that, and the parents and other individuals in the world who help her recognize that as well.
Yeah, and then talking about just like parents and educators, when you think about how they would use this book in the classroom, what do you envision, or like what do you think is the best way to use it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to use it. One way to just kind of think of from an educational perspective is, well, first of all, research has shown that the more diverse curriculum you have, the better the chances are that the children that are from communities of color tend to have a higher sense of belonging and be able to feel part of the classroom. But also it shows that kids that are of not communities of color, maybe white Caucasian children, they're less likely to be discriminatory or say discriminatory things. And it helps other kids understand what discrimination is, so that when it happens, they're more likely to talk about it with their teacher. So in general, any sort of diverse curriculum is really important. And how it relates to our book is there's a number of ways. From kind of like an instructional perspective, we mention a lot of people, influential people, significant historical figures, some that are well known and some that are not. And I think that one thing that we've created, but we still haven't put out there yet, is like a matching game of like who is what, like some sort of like understanding of increasing their knowledge of all these famous people that maybe we don't talk about that much in the classroom setting of diverse backgrounds. And so that would be great to kind of increase that aspect, because then it helps the person know more people that look like them. But other ways to use this book is to be able to have conversations about race and racism. And I think that's the one that people are really looking to for this book. This is one of the first books out there that overtly talks about a discriminatory incident that occurred. In this case, it was in a recess setting. And this is something that might be happening and people aren't recognizing. So for teachers to mention the incident, to read it out loud, and then take a pause and ask for thoughts or comments or reflections, and then remind them of their classroom rules. I know each classroom kind of comes with their own set of rules of respect and understanding and treating others like we want to be treated, setting those reminders. I think in addition to that, deeper conversations about perspective and social skills are embedded in this, of like, how did Zahra feel when she experienced discrimination, and what would you do if you were Zahra? What would you do if you were Zoe? What would have been the best course of action? Kind of just instilling these like little seeds in children to start thinking about these things. What about you?
Yeah, I think just one other thing I'd add is, there's even a call out to at the end of the book where the girl that discriminates against Zahra writes a letter to Zahra apologizing because her teacher told her that what she said was wrong. And it's a call out to teachers to recognize their responsibility to call it out as well. And so it can be, it doesn't even have to be an educational moment in the classroom based on the book, but for teachers to reflect upon and then integrate into the way they run their classrooms.
Yeah, definitely. And I know in some of our past conversations, we talked about, identifying your own biases, and you guys also have a guide in the back for parents or for adults that are reading this book with their child. Like, is there anything that you guys want to call out in the back matter or as part of the curriculum that the parents, teachers, librarians should consider?
Yeah, we can pull it up on the screen too if you give us just a moment.
We can just put it up here too. You want to?
Yeah, let me pull it up here.
Okay.
Share screen. Oh, I'm not the host, so we'll hold up the book instead.
So I think that, you're the host now if you want to use it.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and share it. Why not? It'll look a little cleaner.
Can you see it, Ashley? Okay, perfect. So as you can see, just like Ashley had mentioned, we do have a little note for caregivers and parents in the back that talk about different ways to begin this conversation with your child. And as it's a number of tips, and I think just kind of starting with checking in with yourself as a parent before you have this conversation, and examining any thoughts or biases that you might have yourself before beginning this really important conversation. What's coming up for you, and what's the intention behind this conversation that you're about to have? We also want parents to know that this doesn't have to be one big conversation. This can be a bunch of mini conversations throughout a child's developmental life and cognitive development, because their understanding of race is going to change. And as they get to become adolescents, they'll become more complex as their feelings become more complex. So definitely tailoring it to the child's different developmental stages is important.
Yeah, and then I think it's Harvard has an implicit bias test you can take online. It's free. And so even if you think you don't have any biases or you feel pretty open, there's always something that it tends to uncover for folks. And so it's a way to, go into that and recognize, maybe that I have some blind spots, or maybe something I just need to be a little bit more cognizant of as well. So parents can be proactive, and I think also just allow yourself to recognize you're not perfect, but you're working towards getting better. And there's a great term in a great book called The Good Enough Parent or Good Enough Parenting, and really not trying to be perfect and letting go of that need to be, right on all the time.
There's a lot of other tips too, but I don't know if we want to go through all of them, but those are just some of our favorites.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. It's a great place to start for anyone that's trying to use the book. I know you guys also mentioned historical figures that, you know, are lesser known or not as often celebrated. How did you guys pick the different historical figures to include in the book?
That's a really good question. I think we both did our individual research on just different groups. We really wanted to make sure that we were trying to include as many communities of color that identified as brown into this book in some way. Again, I think this is one of the first books that also does that it's not tailored for one specific group, but it's for multiple groups. So children of multiple racial backgrounds can be able to read and relate to this. So I think it was, some of them were people that we both looked up to growing up and maybe were not as well known. And then some of them were just like based off of research, looking them up and reading their really exciting stories like you found.
Fidel Mundo, who's Filipina, and she's, you know, kind of not very well known, but was one of the first women, or was the first woman thought to be, who was in Harvard's medical school, took her pediatric training back to the Philippines and introduced a lot of new techniques and, you know, tools that she could use in treating children. There's also Jadav Payeng, who's Indian and known for planting just millions of trees to rehabilitate you know, areas in India. And selfishly, we were super excited to include Middle Eastern figures as well, as we'd never seen any in any children's book that we'd encountered. So we included Christian Amanpour and Zaha Hadid as well.
And obviously Malala, because, but I don't know if she fully identifies as Middle Eastern or Southeast Asian or whatever the case might be, but I know she's part of the brown community, and we definitely look up to her and her work.
Yeah, we also wanted to be inclusive of like different types of occupations or things that people had done as well. So it wasn't just, you know, doctor, lawyer, engineer, as might often be the case.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me when we seen the final book, is I know in the editorial process, you know, we started with just the people she drew herself, but then we added more in the end. It was really exciting to see all these different people.
I think those are like our favorite pages, are like the end pages that have like all these other people, because it just shows a kid not only just the different people, but it also shows them all, like Jeff was saying, all the different careers that they can be a part of, and how you can contribute and be meaningful by even planting a tree, right? And it's just like what you do with it. Like, it's the kind of like the world is your oyster.
Yeah, we were so impressed too. Monica, the illustrator, not only just throughout the book, illustrated the book so wonderfully and brought it to life into a whole nother level than we anticipated, but then doing these drawings, you know, in the style of Zahra, you know, young 5-6-year-old girl, so, and drawing herself with these individuals.
So cute.
Just expert, brilliant work by Monica.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fun details in there. So we also talked about like expressing her feelings through color. Do you guys want to talk about how just naming your feelings in that way might be beneficial for some kids?
Yeah, I'm going to share the screen again just to be corny here and say to add some color to what you're saying. So yeah, so as clinicians, we know that children are developing their ability to, you know, express their emotions in a healthy way and developing that language to do that. So while they're doing that, you know, they really look to their parents for how to express emotions and how to name their emotions, or not, if parents happen to not do that with their children. And so we wanted to incorporate just something we do in our practice all the time, which is make emotions explicit, you know, call them out. Some kids, you know, learn in different ways. So Monica helped us really make it a visual format as well. We included the colors that we wanted to base on crayons as well. So it was kind of this whole crayon box theme throughout the book. Monica did a great job as well, bringing in this color trail that you'll see here along the bottom that traces Zahra throughout her day and changes as she has different emotions. And that was a great component to show that children have more than one feeling through their day and can often even in one moment feel mixed things. So when she's heading into school, here we can see she's proud brown. When she's heading into school, she has a mix of emotions that she's both happy and nervous, which is something we can all relate to. So was just a great opportunity to give parents yet another tool to help their kids. And when talking about race and racism or experience of discrimination, now having that language to say, okay, so, whether they saw it happen at school or it happened to them, how did that make you feel? Or how did you notice, someone else? Or maybe let's use some colors to color it out.
Yeah, it was when we were in the editorial process, we did share the images with teachers, and that was something that they called out a lot, that they were really excited about.
Oh, we didn't know that. That's cool.
Wanted to call attention to that. And then are there any other tools in here, either through the visual or through the text, that you think are important for educators to pay attention to or to include when they're, talking to their class, talking to their students?
I think that's actually interesting that you brought that up, because when I first saw the crayon trail, I was like, how great would it be to have kids draw their own crayon trail of their day and associate whatever colors they want with happiness or nervous, and then talk about, so with one tool that we use in therapy a lot is we talk about how not only do you name your emotions, but identifying where that feeling is located, because the more insight that you have about the physiological process of that emotion, the more you're able to know that you're starting to feel it, right? Because for example, if your stomach's hurting, then you're starting to feel anxiety. Sometimes a physical cue is our first insight into how we're feeling internally. And then second, if you can name your emotion, like Dr. Dan Siegel says, then you can tame your emotions. So then you can find the tools that you need to be able to regulate them. So for certain kids, anxiety could be in the stomach, it could be in the hands, wherever it is. One tool that we use in therapy is like an outline of a body, and then you could put where your emotion is on different parts of the body, and you could use different colors. So I think that that's a really great, insightful way of understanding how emotions can be all over, can happen simultaneously, can have different, the researchers has found that sometimes it's hard for the kid to say, I'm feeling nervous, but it's easier for them to associate it with a color because it's just easier language for them to process. So, just being able to have something like that, even a crayon trail, like just in a classroom setting throughout the year of all the different feelings that could come up for kids. If a teacher creates something like that, it's just really nice for them to see the range of emotions throughout like a month or a year that they might be experiencing. I want to be a teacher now.
Yeah.
Me too. That sounds like a really fun project to give kids. So I'm going to ask you a question that it came up in our interview earlier this week, but it comes up a lot when we're talking about your book to buyers that are part of the library and school system. So there's a lot of conversation around critical race theory in certain states right now. So how would you help a librarian or teacher get this book into their system if they're running into that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'd say is, as educators, educate yourself on what the facts are when it comes to critical race theory. And unfortunately, now there are laws, that were passed in, I think, about 22 states now that ban or have some restrictions on teaching of what they think critical race theory is, really as a sort of a political hot point, not really based on what critical race theory is really all about. So I'd recommend the NAACP Legal Defense Fund website has, if you just Google that and critical race theory, you'll get a great outline on what is critical race theory, or YouTube, PBS NewsHour, CRT. There's also, for educators, there's a website that was created initially by the Southern Poverty Law Center called Learning for Justice, that is specific for educators on how they can learn and teach about critical race theory, but also navigate specific laws, because there are a lot of loopholes in them or ways to address them still in those individual states. So I would say definitely educate yourself. I think also it's important to ask yourself, like, why is this coming up now? It's been a legal framework for almost 50 years, since the 70s, and it's really about the ongoing systemic racism even after the civil rights era, and how laws and systems are set up in a way to continue to subjugate communities of color, whether intentionally or not. That's their net effect. And so the reason it's coming up now speaks a lot to, there's great articles that have traced it back specifically to even one interview on Fox News, and how it was really picked up as a sort of, a touch point to kind of create a culture war. And a lot of parents are now taking it into what do you call them, PTA meetings or school board meetings. And the irony there is, or maybe the sad, I don't know what you want to call it, it's really just frustrating, is that when we ask children if they want to learn about these things, they oftentimes say yes, and it's the parents' reaction that's getting in the way of it. So in any case, I would say educate yourself, and that the research has shown the more we talk about these things, the more we educate ourselves about them, the better the outcomes in multiple ways. I hope I answered the question for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great advice, and you are really great at providing resources for the audience on how to kind of overcome those issues. So yeah, you're really great at providing resources for teachers, for parents, about how to kind of overcome that obstacle. I know it's a big problem in some states, not so much in others. Another topic that comes up a lot is about teaching kids how to be anti-racist. How do you think this book fits into that framework or that type of curriculum where a parent or a teacher might be trying to teach anti-racism?
Yeah, so we wanted to write the book obviously for children of color, but ideally that anyone could pick it up and take something away from it, so that you could step into the shoes of Zahra, or at the very least learn more about communities of color.
But can I just say,
yeah,
surprisingly,
please.
we're having a large amount of families from Caucasian and white backgrounds be picking up and reading the book. Like, we've been asking people to send us pictures, and it's a lot of Caucasian white children reading it, and that just really warms our heart for them. But it is opening up like some big questions and things like that in the home, but parents are actually responding really positively. So I just wanted to put that out.
So I'll also couch this, and we're donating our author proceeds to the ACLU and other local social racial justice organizations. So I'll couch it with that and say, one tool is to buy the book and bring it to classrooms and do a story time with it, put it on shelves, share it with friends. And that is actually organically, without having to prod any of our community to do it. They're buying the book. I just got a ping today from a friend who bought the book, is giving it to her grandkids and to her daughter, who's a teacher, to start teaching it to her 1st and 5th graders. But in terms of anti-racism, again, get acquainted to what that term really means. The book itself, we wanted to make sure that none of the onus fell onto the person of color to have to provide the education, right? So often people of color are, have to serve the dominant community in some capacity, whether it's, teaching them about culture or hairstyles or food or whatever that might be. When there's a thing called Google, right? And so there's plenty of information out there. There's tons of books. So access those first. And I think asking—
Hi, my name is Sebastian.
Hi.
Hi, Sebastian.
Hi, Sebastian.
Thanks for coming. And so,
sweet.
Yeah, so, it's educating yourself on what are the principles and taking the burden on yourself to do that. And then recognizing, even if you don't feel directly responsible for anything that's happened to communities of color, it's not about just fixing the past or fixing even the present. It's like, where can we take ourselves next? And looking at what opportunities do I have to take my kids to, appropriately to a protest or demonstration, and just to expose them to more things, or even bring up challenges that you see communities of color have and teach them the context. I think parents and educators have a great opportunity to even look even deeper into how certain things came to be, for educators that really want to do a really stark deep dive. I loved Raoul Peck's miniseries on called Exterminate All the Brutes on HBO. Just a very strong look at, kind of the colonizing history of Europe and the United States as well.
Great. Yeah. So we're coming up on our 30-minute mark. Is there anything that you guys want to share before we wrap up and really go to the keynote for the day? Do you guys have anything that you want to share in the last few minutes?
Go for it.
I think that if people want more information, they can check us out on our website, theproudestcolor.com. Our Instagram is Dr. Sheila's Bookshelf, where we post not only about our own book, but books related to children's mental health. I like to find books that I use in my therapy office and parents can use in the home with their children. So that's it for us
Yeah,
on our end.
We're just so grateful Familias took our book on and is helping us get it out.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And the recorded session will be available in our booth. The School Library Journal booths are available for the next month. So if anybody wants to watch the replay from the beginning, they can do that from our booth. We'll also share the link.
Sheila, I have problem with my internet.
So definitely thank you guys for participating.